Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Pits of Motor Chaos. This shows Dave. I got a special guest, top walk-off funny car driver, Steve Macklyn. How you doing, Steve?
Good, doing well, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing good. Trying to stay warm out here. You know, in Illinois, it's kind of chilly out here.
Yeah, we have the same going on here in Utah.
So, what part of Utah are you from?
I'm just north of Salt Lake, about 12 miles, in a town called Bountiful. Yeah.
So, how was your Christmas?
It was good. Just had a few days off, worked on a few projects. My son and I are in the progress, working on restoring, or well, not restoring, but kind of hot rodding a 49 Ford truck. So we worked on that pretty much most of the weekend.
Oh, nice. So how many events did you do this year with the funny car?
We only did 4. We had several that were canceled with all the COVID stuff. We ended up doing Denver. We did Vegas twice, and then we did the race in Yellowstone up in Montana, which was pretty nice. And then we did a 5th one. It was non-NHRA. We did the Mountain Midwest Drag Racing Series back in Tulsa, the 8 mile stuff, and that was a great time.
So how'd the car run for you?
It did well. We qualified at the Midwest Series. It was, it's a pretty tough field, 8 mile, 360s, 370s, pretty much we qualified with a 372. We went out first round, lost to Doug Gordon, the world champ. And it's pretty tough to beat him. But, the car did well. We didn't really have any major problems. We're gaining on the top people. We still haven't caught them yet, but little by little, we're getting closer and closer. We're usually a 10th, maybe 1500ths off of the top. We do a little bit better in the 8th mile. Our car's a little bit quicker up to the half track. We lose it a little bit in the top end. But, it was really a good year, and we're just wondering what's going to happen for next year. We're just getting ready, putting new parts and pieces on the car, just maintenance-wise. We're not really changing a lot in the combination. We might change to a different cam, but just getting through the winter, waiting for March to come.
Yeah, it's good to see Doug back out there again after the accident. That accident looked kind of scary.
Which accident was that?
The one, Doug Gordon. Yeah, it's good to see him back out.
Oh, Doug, yeah. Holy mackerel, that was crazy. I mean, we were on the return road, I believe, or in the staging. I can't remember when it happened, but yeah. I mean, it was good that he walked away. The safety equipment did its job. They're back out there and obviously running stronger than ever. They have new cars, and I mean, Doug's been great. He was actually Doug. Was my very first opponent in my very first race, and so it's great to see him out again, and we enjoy racing with him for sure. And the whole family is a great group of people.
So, Steven, let me rewind the clock with you and ask you, how did you get into drag racing?
Well, I was 16 years old. I used to drive by a guy's house that lived about 2 miles from me, and he had a 7 Camaro that was always on the driveway. He also had a 69 Z28 street car, and I always admired him. And one day I just walked down the driveway and started talking to him, and he said, "Hey, why don't you come with me Friday out to the races?" And I went out. We went out on Friday, and then the next week we went out on a Saturday, and I just hung out with him, and I saw a nitro funny car for the first time. That was in, I believe, 78. So I was 16 years old, and I kept telling everybody one day I'm going to drive one of those things, and it was ultimately 28 years later that I did. But I started off in a Camaro, ran 1180s. I think first time we took it out, small block Chevy, and we got it down to where it was running 1050s by the time I was done. And so I pretty much raced, just ET stuff from 78 through probably 92. In the 80s, I took a break from drag racing a little bit. I did a little bit of it, but I also raced 3-wheelers and 4-wheelers when they were starting. I raced with Honda in the 82, 83, 84 through 87. And then I got out of drag racing in 92. So, I spent 14 years in it, racing just mainly here in Salt Lake, which, I don't know if you know, they recently closed the track down a couple years ago.
Yeah.
But the old Bonneville Raceway, and then it was Rocky Mountain Raceway, which had been around since the late 50s, early 60s. And, yeah, so that was it. So I spent a lot of years out there. My kids raced out there when they were younger and juniors. We raced a few times since then. But, yeah, so I quit drag racing for a while from like 92 through 2000 and I think early 2000s. And I did oval track racing, raced modifieds, and also did monster truck stuff from 99 to 2004, I believe. So I did that. Then in 2006, I bought a Nitro Funny car. I bought it from Steve Pfluger, who was chassis builder. Dale Poldy, the War Eagle fame, was driving for him at that time. And we bought the car in 2006. I picked it up close to my birthday in 2006 in May, and then licensed in it in September of 2006 down in Las Vegas. And then we ran just one NHRA event because we were nowhere near capable of running with those guys. But we did run a lot of the IHRA stuff. Ran some in 2007 up in Canada, and then ran most of the 2008 season we ran. We won the first event in San Antonio, and I think we were in the points lead the first 4 or 5 races, and then I had to drop out. My mom got sick and dropped out the last couple of races, so we ended up 5th that year in the IHRA, and then with all the stuff that was going on back with Evan Knoll and the Torco stuff and all that, when it got pulled, the plug got pulled there, the funny car class went away, and in the IHRA, and like I said, we were competitive there, but not in the NHRA. And our chassis, that was back when they were changing chassis, and so it just we ended up selling the car, and it went to oh my gosh, I just lost his name, the champion, NHRA Nostalgia champion out of California, and Brad Littlefield was helping him, and anyhow, I lost his name. But yeah, that car, and then it was sold. The car got sold to a guy back in the Midwest who's been running it at the Nostalgia events. And then I drove a Nostalgia funny car for Jack Harris, the Nitro Thunder car, for a few years, and I think that wrapped up in like 2013. And then I kind of went into retirement, and as it would be, and then in 2015 we went over and helped a good friend of ours, Mike Strasburg, and the Strasburg family run dragster over there in Denver on Father's Day with my 2 boys, and we've got a chance to work together. And I mean, I've been a single father for 17 years, but they grew up around racing. They were just never big enough to really help, but they were finally old enough to help, and we really enjoyed working together. And so on the way home, my one son suggested, hey, we should try this again, and we bought a roller from the Strasburg family. It was Annie Whiteley's old car, her Mustang, and we bought that, spent a couple of years, and then 2017 finally got it together and started racing alcohol stuff, and that brings us up to 2020.
Now, you were mentioning selling the car to Littlefield. Was that for Jason Rupert?
Jason Rupert, thank you. Yes, Jason Rupert had the car for years, and he won several championships with it. I mean, the Pfluger cars were always good. It was a single bay car, which doesn't have the extra upright in the foot compartment, so it's a little bit more flexible, and it really worked well in the Nostalgia deal. And so he had the chassis, and the engine actually went to Chet Thomas, who runs it on the Salt with Donnie from Raceback and that, and they went out and set a 300-mile-an-hour speed record with it first time out, and still have most of the parts of that engine still in the 911 Roadster that they use run on the Salt, both in the dry lakes and up here there. So the engine and the chassis are still rolling somewhere, just not with me in it.
Yeah, I know Jason's got a big show car now.
Yeah, he is. I'm excited to see it. I saw him, he started it up they had some video of it and that, and I think they actually went out and made some test passes in Bakersfield recently. I haven't talked to them for a while, but they dominated in the nostalgia ranks, and if he can get a handle on the nitro car, he's a hell of a driver. He's driven alcohol cars and nostalgia cars, and now the big show. So I hope he gets a handle on it and goes out and chases down some of the big guys.
Yep. Now, when you started out drag racing in the ET racing, did you have any luck with that?
Yeah, I did. We did pretty well. In fact, I don't know, it's been 3 or 4 months ago. I was going through the basement, found a box of old plaques and trophies from back then. There were a lot of guys, that raced in Utah that are still racing now. Eddie Olpen, who runs Super Gas, and Top Dragster, and I think Top Sportsman as well. I raced against him and several other people, and they always seemed to have my number, but I got by him a few times, and it was just all a consistency game. And when I started, it was a 5/10 full tree, and I didn't have a delay bar. They had just switched to the 5/10, but when I was running, it was a 4/10 pro tree. So you just go up and let go of the trans brake button and usually cut a pretty decent line. But as soon as they went to the full tree, that was in the early 90s, and that's kind of when I got out of it. But up until then, we ran well. We went a bunch of rounds, won some of the Saturday night events out there, did all right in some of the Friday night ET grudge matches. And so, I wouldn't say that we were the king of the hill, but, mid-pack, somewhere in that range.
Now, how about when you did the 3-wheeler racing? Do you have any luck with that?
Yeah, we did really well with that. I did real well. We did a lot of off-road stuff. Ran the Baja 500 and the 1000 stuff. Did a lot of short course, a lot of flat track. I had a really good friend of mine that kind of got me into it, and he was pretty good with a two-stroke. We ran the 250Rs and did very well in that. So, as far as wins and losses, that's probably where I've had my most success in terms of wins per event.
Now, how was going from a nitro car to a alcohol? How was that transformation for you?
Yeah, I would say the alcohol car. I was just talking to Strasburgs about that today. That I find the alcohol car the most challenging thing I think I've ever driven. The nitro cars, they're fast and quick, but an alcohol car, you're up there at the line. You're controlling the launch RPM, you're controlling the foot swap, you're shifting the gears. You're driving the thing. So there's a lot going on in that 5.5 to 6 seconds that you don't have like in a nitro car, or you don't have in other forms of racing. And so it's tough. I think I've done okay with it. I've been working on my lights. We've been working with the car to work with me. There's a lot to do with a driver's style and how quick the car is early in terms of the foot swap. If you're heavy on the clutch, if you're out with the clutch, you have to tune for a little bit differently than if you're quick, with the pedal going down. And my lights are getting better, and we had a round win up in Seattle, and then we just had a couple at the regional here in Vegas in October, and got to the final, and then the driver went brain dead for a few minutes, and we lost to Steve Gasparelli in the final, or we might have had a regional win there. But to switch from the nitro, the nitro's quick and puts you back in the seat, but the alcohol car, I think, is by far more difficult to drive in terms of being consistent and being quick, because it's so critical with the launch RPM being the same, getting the shift points correctly, keeping it, obviously keep it in the groove and getting through the shake and that sort of thing.
So what's the quickest pass you made with the alcohol car?
We went at 5:52. I think it was 260, high 260s, and that was up in Seattle. The air was incredibly good, and the car was running well. So it 552, 260 something. We've gone pretty consistent 60s and 70s most of the place we go. We went 58 in Vegas, We were in the high 70s up in Yellowstone. So it just depends on the altitude. But, like I said, we're about a tenth, maybe tenth and a half, I would think, if you just kind of across the board behind the Whiteleys and the Gordons and the Bellemires. And, sometimes we're a little further than that behind Annie and Sean Bellemire because they're always running quick. But, but a tenth of a second, 1500ths of a second at the end, it doesn't matter how close you are, you're still behind.
Now, Steve, what's the quickest we've went nitro funny car?
We went this is quarter mile. We went 5:04 at 3:01 was the quickest pass that I ever made. So that kind of relates down to like maybe a 4:30. I would say maybe in the 1,000 foot. So, we never were setting the world on fire, but 5:04 at 3:01 was the quickest, and I actually made that right after we blew it up. It was 2007 in April in Vegas. We blew it up in qualifying and came back and for first round and did that. So it was good, but nowhere near as fast as these guys are going today. That's for sure.
Now, you think you'd ever go back to nitro?
I'd love to go back to nitro. If I had the funds to do it, I was in a lot better position back in 2006, 7, and 8 financially to do it. And I think it's gotten so much more expensive. And, I think it'd be fun to go out and try it again. I'd like to try nostalgia, but I think it's probably gotten just as expensive. So, but, having the crew and the number of people and the number of hours it takes just to maintain those. I mean, the alcohol cars do take a lot of time and that, but my sons and a good friend of mine named Jerry Osler, and they come and, he helps us out a lot, and we pretty much do it with just 4 people. But, you go to a nitro deal and you end up having to have 6 or 8 or so many people to get through it, and the cost is just is crazy. But if somebody wanted to do it, or I win the lottery, pay for it, or I win the lottery, or whatever, I'd definitely give it a shot again. My boys and I would love to try that.
Now for the alcohol car, you have any sponsorship?
We have a few people that help us out, some local people. Another friend of mine, Steve Robinson, with Megavap, and they build coolers and big construction, big warehouse air movement management systems. They help us out a lot. The Strasburgs, really, they help us out with when they can, but mainly just knowledge and trying to keep me from doing stupid things. We have a couple of small sponsors, Kenson Auto Sales here in Bountiful, which is a dealership that my son works for. And then we have Clean Boost Oils that help us out. Brett Winberg, he's an awesome guy and helps us out as well with some, discounts and oil. And we have CP Carrillo gives us some help with our pistons. So there are a few small things. B&J Transmissions. That's through the Strasburgs or whatever. They're probably our biggest help in terms of just, morale and support in terms of knowledge and technical stuff. They help us out a great deal. So, but the rest of it comes out of our pocket.
Now, do you have a screw blower in that car?
Yeah, we have a PSI D-rotor on this car. It's a 521 Brad Block, Noonan heads, and I think it's pretty good horsepower. We're probably down a couple hundred horsepower from the big boys, but we don't run it quite as hard, and in terms of RPM is a killer for these things. 10,000 RPM is crazy for 500 cubic inches and springs and that, but we run a PSI, and then we have a Lindbergh 11-inch clutch, and then we obviously run the B&J 3-speed in it. Mark Williams rear end with 430 gears, so it's kind of a standard deal for everybody, that style, that size motor, the style of supercharger, and internals are a little bit different, compression a little bit different, people camshafts. Everybody has their own combination.
Now, what make is the body of the car?
It's a 2013 Mustang. It's one that we got from Annie. and we'd love to get a Camaro body at some point, but that's a little bit further down the road, I think, than most things. We don't have a lot of spares, so every extra dollar we get goes to putting together spare stuff. We're trying to put together a spare short block and that, just because, things are going to happen. And when you're out there, and if you don't have a spare short block or spare set of heads or whatever, you hurt something, you're coming home. So we're really, we stay with a smaller trailer and a pickup truck, just so we don't have to spend a ton on the trailer, and just try to put everything back in the car to keep us out there.
Now, Steve, do you prefer quarter mile or eighth mile?
I like the quarter mile because that's just what I grew up with, and that's what I'm familiar with. And mainly in the West, it's all quarter mile stuff. But I really enjoyed that Midwest drag racing series event, and we're definitely going to try to do some of that again this year. So, and for me, the biggest reason I would say I like one or the other better is, the eighth mile is a little easier on parts. We perform better in the eighth mile than we do the quarter mile. So from that standpoint, from a pocketbook and performance standpoint, the eighth mile is a little bit more, suits better for us. The quarter mile, if you're doing well, you can, win a little bit more there, maybe in terms of, reaction time, but there's always that chance that somebody's going to, come by you with big horsepower. So I guess if I had to pick one, I'd say 8 miles probably better for us as a team. But quarter mile is pretty much what we do most of the time, because that's just what we have within a 1,000-mile radius of us. That's pretty much everything is that way.
All right. Now, since you kind of lean towards eighth mile, let me ask you this: would you ever consider running one of the Funny Carcass events?
We'd love to. I've talked to Chris a couple of times about going to his stuff, and it just ended up being, I drive the truck and trailer. Everybody else flies in. So,